A hardened criminal, double-crossed and left for dead by his partners in a lucrative robbery, takes on a nationwide organized crime syndicate to get back his share of the money in Richard Stark's gritty 1962 crime thriller, The Hunter, which has been adapted twice for the big screen, in 1967's classic Point Blank, directed by John Boorman and starring Lee Marvin, and followed 32 years later by Brian Helgeland's 1999 film Payback, with Mel Gibson in the lead. Welcome to Crime Novels to Film. I'm Jeffrey A. Cooper. In the first of 24 novels featuring Parker, the meanest, toughest, nastiest SOB you're ever going to get behind, and published originally by Pocket Books in 1962, this is The Hunter. A mean, determined, and poorly dressed man named Parker walks across the George Washington Bridge into New York City with revenge on his mind. Parker visits his wife Lynn, who betrayed him in a robbery that went sour before she shot Parker and left him for dead. Lynn tells Parker that Mal Resnick, one of their partners in the failed robbery, sends a courier by to pay her rent every month. Lynn tells Parker all she knows, then kills herself that night with an overdose of sleeping pills. We find out through a flashback that Parker is a professional criminal who specializes in armed robbery. Parker commits lucrative heists, then lives in a series of luxury hotels until the money from that heist runs out and he needs to move on to his next job. Parker's at this point that he needs money when he agrees to be part of a heist stealing cash that's intended for a large weapons deal. The heist goes off without a hitch, but Mal betrays the whole crew, killing everyone except Parker. Mal convinces Lynn to shoot Parker rather than be killed herself, then leaves with the money and Lynn. Parker survives the shooting, but is arrested for vagrancy and sent to prison. Mal, in the meantime, has made it back into the good graces of The Outfit, an organized crime syndicate that he was on the outs with after an error on the job resulted in an $80,000 loss. The money from the arms sale robbery paid off Mal's debt, but he panics after hearing from Stegman that Parker is alive and looking for him. Mal meets a man named Carter, one of the two managers for the outfit in New York City, along with another man named Fairfax. Carter declines to help Mal, believing that Parker is a problem that Mal needs to handle on his own. Mal decides to leave a trap for Parker by spreading word of his whereabouts and surprising him when he arrives. But Parker surprises Mal instead before he's ready. Mal doesn't have Parker's money, having used it to pay back his debt to the outfit, but Parker wants his fair share of the heist money that Mal stole regardless. Parker finds out what he needs to know about the outfit's chain of command, then he kills Mal. Parker visits Carter in his office, gets a gun off Carter's goon, and holds Carter at gunpoint, demanding $45,000, which was his share of the robbery money. Carter refuses, saying that Mal's debt was Mal's responsibility and died with him. Parker makes him call Bronson, his boss, who refuses to pay. Parker kills Carter, then threatens Bronson. Parker surprises a returning Fairfax in his apartment and kills his bodyguards. Parker tells Fairfax that a loose network of criminals will hit all of their businesses if he doesn't get his money back. Fairfax calls Bronson, who tells Parker he'll get his money, but that he's a dead man. He doesn't kill Fairfax, but promises to come back and see him if things don't go right. He goes to the subway platform to collect his money and disarms a number of outfit goons waiting there to kill him. Parker calls Fairfax, who has the money delivered to the platform. Parker has 3 ways out, and there are outfit goons waiting for him at all 3. He escapes through a rail yard, pursued by the syndicate goons, until he's finally able to evade them and escape with the money. Parker gets his money. He makes plans to get plastic surgery to hide from the outfit. As he's leaving, 2 detectives pull him aside for questioning. Parker escapes in a cab, but takes the wrong suitcase with him, leaving his $45,000 with the 2 detectives. Parker escapes on a train and thinks about doing a syndicate job. Later, Parker and 2 accomplices rob an outfit bookmaking operation. Parker tells the employees to tell Bronson that it was him. They break into a nearby lawyer's office, drink his booze, and split the money, $23,000 to Parker. They play poker until dawn, letting the heat die down from the robbery. Then Parker gets on a plane to Omaha to get his new face. Parker is a different kind of crime fiction hero. He'd be the villain in most books. While most crime fiction heroes solve crimes, Parker willfully commits them. He's a cold, calculating master thief who's willing to kill if necessary. Parker is not hiding a heart of gold underneath his tough exterior. He's mean, he's nasty, and if you cross him, he's coming after you with everything he has. Parker is strictly business. He has no feelings to work through and is remarkably conscience-free. Parker has no friends. There's no mention of Parker's family. Heck, we don't even get the guy's first name. There's no logical reason to get behind Parker as a narrative hero, but you do. Parker can't be stepped on, stepped over, or tossed aside. This is a big part of Parker's appeal. I think we'd all like to be this badass when someone gets on our wrong side. Point Blank is a classic crime thriller and is considered by many film experts to be one of the seminal movies of the late 1960s. It's a stylish, cold-blooded noir and a creative precursor to the innovative filmmaking of the 1970s and beyond. John Boorman brought out the raw, brutal grittiness of the novel, aided by one of Hollywood's top stars at the peak of his popularity. There's a short list when it comes to genuine tough guy actors, and Lee Marvin was at the top of that list. He's perfectly cast in the role of Walker, and if you've ever seen any of the man's work, you know he's great in this film. Marvin could do mean, callous, and unsentimental standing on his head. I really liked his portrayal of Walker. He's tough, focused, cold, and harsh, just like Parker was in the book. It's one of Lee Marvin's best-known roles for a reason. The supporting cast is all top shelf. Angie Dickinson, Keenan Wynn, John Vernon, Sharon Aker, and Carol O'Connor are all great in key roles. The film also had some early high-profile roles for emerging actors like James Sikking from Hill Street Blues, horror icon Sid Haig, and the great character actress Kathleen Freeman. This was one of those movies that I saw before I read the book that it was based on. I thought the film was wonderfully stylized and beautifully shot by Philip Lathrop. The script by Alexander Jacobs, David Newhouse, and Rafe Newhouse combines elements of film noir and European cinema, using a non-linear structure to create a widely influential masterpiece of crime, punishment, and revenge. Then I read the book, and my opinion about Point Blank changed. I still think Point Blank is a great, exciting film, but I don't think Point Blank is as good as the book. The novel was about Parker taking his life back from the people who took it from him, not about him being manipulated as a pawn in a corporate criminal power struggle. There's obviously a reason why the filmmakers chose to do it this way, and I'm probably the only one complaining about it, so maybe it's me. And really, what do I know? In 2016, Point Blank was added to the National Film Registry's list of films selected for preservation for their historical, cultural, and aesthetic contributions. Me? I'm doing a commentary show on the internets. Yes, I've done the math. 30 years after Point Blank's release, production on Payback began in August of 1997. When Payback was released in Australia, the tagline for the movie had to be changed because the tagline for the movie in the United States, "Get ready to root for the bad guy," has a completely different meaning in Australia. Critics of the film blasted its mean-spiritedness, the often sadistic violence, and the gratuitous torture scenes. Positive reviews called the film bold and entertaining, a throwback to the gritty action of a 1970s crime film, and praised the sharp, often funny script written by Brian Helgeland, with the rewrites being undertaken by Terry Hayes. This movie has its faults, but I have to say it's one of my favorites. There were some obvious deviations from the original source material, but like Point Blank, so much of the movie rests on the shoulders of the Parker character, who is called Porter in this movie. I really liked Mel Gibson in this movie. Is he better in the role than Lee Marvin? He's different. Porter is mean, unlikable, tough, and unsympathetic. He steals money off a blind beggar, for crying out loud. The marketing for this film sold it as a typical Mel Gibson, funny and charming action hero, but it is not a funny and charming role, and definitely not a typical Mel Gibson action hero. I think a lot of the negative reaction to this movie at the time it was released was because people had a problem seeing Mel Gibson this way. They don't have that problem now, of course, but at the time, audiences weren't ready to buy him in the role of a bad guy. Greg Henry is fantastic playing Val Resnick, formerly Mal, the former friend who betrays Porter in the aftermath of a lucrative robbery. Henry's interpretation hews a lot closer to the book, and he really delivers with the slimy bluster of the character. David Paymer is great as the Weasley, low-rent scumbag Arthur Stegman. The scene where Stegman talks smack until the tables are turned and he immediately starts groveling is very funny. Maria Bello and Deborah Kara Unger have brief moments to shine, and I love seeing Bill Duke, even when he's playing a bad cop. Lucy Liu, William Devane, James Coburn, John Glover, and Chris Christopherson round out a truly great cast. I think Payback stayed a little bit closer to The Hunter in both its tone and its presentation, but still, I don't think Payback is as good as the book. There's a real future for this character if someone focuses on some long-term storytelling. After watching Payback, the only thing I saw in Porter's future were some really expensive orthopedic shoes. Yes, gang, this week it's the book. Like I said, it's one of my favorites, so maybe the deck was stacked against both movies this time, but I encourage you to check out both Point Blank and Payback for yourself. I'll be back on the next edition of Crime Novels to Film.